6 times. Not once, not twice. 6. Do you know what that means? It means the warning wasn't hidden in shadows. It wasn't whispered in passing. It was loud enough, clear enough, repeated enough for even the deafest heart to notice. But you didn't. You brushed it off. You thought, maybe it doesn't matter, maybe it's not that serious, maybe I'll get away with it. That's the trick, isn't it? You think you're untouchable. You think you can play with fire and somehow walk away without the burns. But warnings don't multiply for no reason. Every repetition was another chance, another escape route, another moment to pause before you threw yourself into the lion's mouth. Warnings don't come by accident. They're not random noises in the air, not background static you can casually tune out. They're deliberate, placed, positioned right in your path like flashing red lights on a highway, daring you to keep driving at full speed. When a warning repeats, it's not because the messenger ran out of vocabulary. It's because you are and out of excuses. Life doesn't stutter. It insists, again and again, and every repetition is a sign that something bigger is watching, calculating, waiting to see if you'll finally wake up, or if you'll keep sleepwalking straight into disaster. Most people like to imagine warnings as optional, like polite suggestions you can shrug off without consequence. Oh, it's just a thought. Maybe it doesn't apply to me. That's the lie we tell ourselves, isn't it? We place ourselves above the line, above the rules, as though the fire burns everyone else but somehow skips over us. But reality doesn't play favorites. The warning doesn't multiply because you're special. It multiplies because you're stubborn. And each time it comes, it slices away another layer of your excuses until the truth is standing naked in front of you. You knew, you heard, you ignored. That's the frightening part. 6 warnings don't just speak about the danger ahead. They reveal something about you, about your heart, about that twisted love for the edge you can't seem to resist. Because ignoring 1 warning, that can be a mistake. Ignoring 2, that's careless. But ignoring 6, that's willful blindness. That's you plugging your ears and humming your favorite song while the walls around you crack louder and louder. You convince yourself it's nothing, but deep down, there's that knot in your stomach that knows. The kind of knowing you can't shake when you close your eyes at night. The kind that whispers, you had your chance. Warnings are gifts wrapped in sharp edges. They aren't designed to make you comfortable. They're meant to sting, to jolt you, to shove you back from the cliff. But if you treat them like noise, you miss the point. You turn life preservers into background chatter. And the cruel irony is that the very repetition you dismiss as nagging is the proof of how much time you've already been given. Time you can't get back. Time you wasted believing you were immune. Think about it. If a train is coming, how many signals do you really need before you step off the tracks? 1 horn should be enough. 2 would be mercy. But 6 is absurd generosity. 6 is patience stretched thin. 6 is a clock ticking louder while you keep your eyes glued to your reflection in the glass. And when that train finally hits, it won't matter that you thought you had more time. It won't matter that you pretended not to hear. The warnings will stand as witnesses, proof that you weren't blind. You were just arrogant enough to believe you could gamble with fate and win. Every warning is a mirror. Each one reflects back the same question. Will you change, or will you stay the same? And when the mirror keeps showing up and you keep looking away, you're not escaping it. You're building your own case against yourself. 1 warning is chance. 6 warnings? That's a trial, and the verdict is already hanging over your head. Because warnings don't multiply forever. They stop. And when they stop, it's not because the danger went away. It's because the time for listening is over and the time for consequences has arrived. There's something strange about silence, isn't there? That moment after the warning has been given, after the voice has spoken, after the sign has flashed in your face, and yet nothing changes. You walk out into the world as if you didn't just hear what you heard. You sip your coffee, check your phone, laugh at some meaningless joke, all while carrying this heavy little secret that you've been told not once, not twice, but repeatedly, don't go public. And still, your chest burns with defiance. The more you're told not to, the more it feels like you have to. Like the restriction itself becomes the temptation. Like the lock on the door makes you itch to see what's behind it. And that's the flaw, isn't it? The human itch. Tell someone not to touch the fire, and their fingers twitch. Tell someone to stay quiet, and suddenly their throat aches to speak. It's never about need, it's about rebellion, a twisted craving to prove that no one, not even God himself, gets to control your voice. But here's the catch. Warnings aren't about control. They're not a leash meant to choke you. They're protection, a shield, a barricade between you and what's waiting on the other side. The kind of waiting that isn't patient or kind, the kind that devours. And when you break through, thinking you've outsmarted fate, you don't find freedom, you find teeth. It's almost laughable, the way people confuse obedience with weakness. They hear the word don't and instantly translate it as, you're not capable, you're not powerful, you're being caged. But what if it isn't about you being caged? What if it's about the beast outside the cage? What if the 6 warnings weren't chains on your wrists, but barriers keeping the monster from ripping you apart? You wouldn't laugh at a locked door if you knew what was scratching at the other side. But humans are curious creatures. They'll pry the door open, convinced it's their right, and then scream in shock when the thing they were warned about sinks its claws into their skin. 6 times. Imagine the patience it takes to repeat yourself 6 times. 6 separate moments where heaven leans down and says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And still, you smile, nod, maybe even feel a little shiver down your spine, and then you go right back to plotting the very thing you were told not to. That isn't ignorance, that's arrogance. That's standing at the edge of a rooftop, wind in your face, grinning at gravity like it doesn't apply to you. It always applies, and the ground is always waiting. The truth is, the warnings aren't just about the act, they're about the heart behind the act. Every time you ignore the voice, every time you shrug it off, you harden yourself. You dull that edge of conviction, you make it easier to walk into the fire next time, until eventually you don't even hear the warnings anymore. Not because they stopped, but because you tuned them out so long that your ears grew deaf. And when that silence comes, when the warnings vanish, that's not freedom, that's judgment. That's the moment the game shifts, the cards flip, and you realize you've been gambling with a loaded deck. Warnings don't keep repeating to annoy you. They repeat because of what's at stake. If it wasn't serious, you wouldn't hear it more than once. But 6 times, that means something colossal is hanging over your head. Something so massive you can't even imagine the fallout. And still, you flirt with it. You treat it like a dare. You want to believe the rules bend for you, that somehow you're the exception. But exceptions are illusions, and every gambler learns sooner or later, the house always wins. So when you're told 6 times not to go public, it isn't censorship, it isn't control, it isn't fear. It's survival. It's a net being thrown over you while you thrash, convinced it's holding you back, not realizing it's the only thing keeping you from drowning. And the tragic comedy of it all, when you finally cut through that net in the name of freedom, you'll feel powerful for a moment, just a moment, until the waves close over your head and the silence swallows you whole. Funny thing about warnings. People think they come wrapped in thunder and lightning, fire and brimstone, the kind of spectacle that makes the hair on your arms stand straight. But most of the time they come soft, a whisper, a flicker, a tiny little voice gnawing at the edge of your skull saying, "Don't do it." And you hear it, oh yes, you hear it loud and clear, but instead of pausing, instead of taking it for what it is, you shove it aside like background noise, like static on an old television. That's how the downfall begins. Not with chaos, but with dismissal. Not with a roar, but with a shrug. You want to know the secret about those 6 warnings? They weren't just about the act itself. They were tests. Each one was a chance to measure your response, to see whether you'd humble yourself or play God with your own destiny. Every warning was a mirror, placed right in front of you, daring you to look at your own stubbornness. And each time you turned away, each time you ignored it, you etched another line in the book of your consequences. It's not punishment, it's a record you wrote yourself. People love to imagine that ignoring warnings makes them bold, untouchable, rebellious in the most glamorous sense. They strut through danger like it's a runway, thinking the world will bow to their audacity. But rebellion doesn't crown you, it buries you. Ignoring what was repeated 6 times isn't bravery, it's blindness. You think you're walking into freedom, but really you're tightening the chains around your ankles link by link until one day you can't even move. And the cruelest part? You won't even notice the chains until it's too late. That's how defiance works. It doesn't strangle you instantly. It lets you dance first. It lets you laugh, shout, enjoy your little rebellion, and then, when you least expect it, it snaps shut. And yet, people will argue with warnings like they're negotiable, as if a divine instruction is some kind of suggestion, a mere advisory, like a speed limit sign you can choose to ignore because you're late for work. That's the arrogance of man, believing the universe is flexible to his schedule. Warnings aren't suggestions, they're ultimatums. They're the last thread between you and collapse. And when you treat ultimatums like options, you're not just walking into danger, you're sprinting. 6 warnings. Think about the weight of that number. Not once, not twice, not even 3 times. 6. Do you know what that means? That means there was room for error, space for hesitation, grace upon grace. You were given more chances than you deserved, and still you toyed with them like a child pulling petals off a flower. He loves me not. Obey, disobey, listen, ignore, until the petals are gone and all you're left with is a naked stem and an empty hand. That's what happens when the warnings run out. You're left with nothing. People don't see the mercy in warnings. They see inconvenience. They hear, "Don't go public," and they immediately translate it to, "Someone is trying to silence me." They make themselves the hero in a story where obedience equals oppression. But what if the silence wasn't about oppression? What if it was about protection? What if the thing you're so desperate to reveal, to shout, to display, is the very thing that will be used to break you? You think you're carrying a trophy, but it's actually a target. And the moment you parade it out, you paint yourself in red for the wolves. It's ironic, isn't it? People pray for signs, beg for guidance, demand clarity. And when they get it, 6 times clear as daylight, they treat it like background chatter. They want the guidance on their terms, the kind that fits their ego, the kind that pats them on the back and says, "Yes, go ahead, you were right all along." But guidance isn't about feeding your ego. It's about saving your life. And sometimes saving your life means shutting your mouth, staying in the shadows, letting the moment pass without fireworks. But to the prideful heart, silence feels like defeat. So they choose noise, they choose exposure, and they call it courage. But courage without wisdom is suicide. You can dress it up however you like. Call it boldness, authenticity, transparency. It doesn't matter what costume you put on it. It's still you, standing in the middle of the street, daring the speeding car to hit you. And when it does, no one will applaud. They'll just shake their heads and whisper about how many times you were warned. 6 times, 6 clear chances to avoid disaster, and every single one discarded like trash. You want to know the sickest part? Sometimes the punishment isn't even the disaster itself. Sometimes the real punishment is watching the aftermath unfold, knowing deep down you had every opportunity to stop it. Living with the echo of those 6 warnings, each one replaying in your head like a broken record, taunting you with what could have been. And that echo becomes the loudest voice you'll ever hear. People love to talk about timing, don't they? They treat it like some gentle clock, ticking steadily, predictably, giving them all the time in the world to figure things out. But timing isn't a polite clock. Timing is a trap. It's sharp, sudden, brutal. It snaps shut on you when you least expect it, and by the time you realize it's there, you're already caught. That's the cruel joke of it all. You thought you had tomorrow, but tomorrow never signed a contract with you. Tomorrow owes you nothing. Timing isn't your friend. It's a shadow that waits until you blink, and then it moves in for the kill. Most people miss the real game of timing because they're busy telling themselves pretty little lies. Lies like, I'll do it later, or I'm not ready yet. They think delay is safe. That stalling somehow keeps them in control. But that's the biggest trick of all. Delays don't freeze the game. They accelerate the consequences. You waste today, and you think tomorrow will be kind enough to give you the same opportunity again. It won't. Every time you hesitate, every time you ignore the urgency, the window closes a little more, until one day there is no window, just a wall. A wall you can't climb, can't break, can't move. And that's the part people don't like to face. The idea that there's a moment, a razor-thin second, where everything hangs in the balance. That one yes or one no determines whether you rise or you collapse. It's terrifying because it strips away the illusion of control. You want to believe you can keep the steering wheel in your hands forever, but in reality, timing jerks it right out of your grip and throws you into the curve. You don't get to negotiate with it. You don't get to argue for an extension. You either move when the moment is hot, or you get burned alive waiting for a better one that will never come. But here's the fun part. Timing doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It doesn't walk into the room with drums and trumpets saying, "This is your moment. Take it now." No, it's subtle. It sneaks in, it whispers, it hides in ordinary things, in the middle of a routine day when you're least prepared. That's why most people miss it. They're too busy looking for the grand stage, the perfect sign, the flashing neon arrows. Meanwhile, the real opportunity passes right under their nose in silence, and when they finally realize it, it's already gone. Timing doesn't wait around for the distracted. What makes it even more dangerous is how quickly people justify missing their moment. They convince themselves, maybe it wasn't the right time anyway, or maybe I'll get another chance. That's the lullaby that puts them back to sleep while life robs them blind. They can't stand the idea that they let it slip, so they wrap it in excuses. Excuses that soothe the sting, but kill their destiny. Because once you start excusing missed timing, you'll miss it over and over again, until missing becomes a habit. And habits are harder to break than chains. Timing is ruthless because it exposes who you really are. When the pressure hits, do you move or do you freeze? Do you obey the whisper instantly or do you stall for comfort? That single reaction reveals everything about you. Timing doesn't care about your intentions, your feelings, your plans. It only cares about action. You can have the purest heart, the greatest vision, the deepest passion. But if you freeze when the clock strikes, it's worthless. Timing doesn't reward intentions, it rewards decisions. And here's the darkest part. Sometimes you don't even know how close you were. You don't see how that one step, that one phone call, that one risk could have flipped your entire life upside down. You'll never know what was on the other side of that door you didn't open. That ignorance becomes a curse because deep down you'll always feel it. That gnawing sense that you missed something huge, that you let timing slip through your fingers. It eats at you slowly, like acid, until you start to hate the sound of clocks because every tick feels like mockery. People want timing to be merciful, but mercy isn't its language. Timing is sharp, merciless, a blade that cuts without hesitation. It doesn't wait for your emotions to catch up. It doesn't care if you're scared or unprepared. It only cares that you move. And if you don't, it moves without you. And once it's gone, once that window seals shut, you can pound your fists against the wall all you like. Nothing will open it again. The brutal truth is this: timing is the difference between being remembered and being forgotten, between walking into destiny or crawling into regret. It's the razor edge on which everything balances, and most people never realize they're standing on it until they've already fallen off. People always think consequences arrive slowly, like some gentle tide that gives you plenty of warning before it reaches your feet. But that's a lie. Consequences are not slow. They are quick, sharp, and they don't knock before they enter. You think you can play games with time, with choices, with silence, but life doesn't hand out endless second chances. Every decision you make, every risk you dodge, every warning you ignore, it's a seed. And seeds don't wait forever. They sprout, they grow, and one day they break through the floor right beneath you. That's when you realize the monster you created with your hesitation has come home to collect. You tell yourself, I'll deal with it later, I'll clean it up when I'm stronger, I'll fix it when it's convenient. But the truth is, consequences don't care about your schedule. They don't respect your timing. They grow in the dark while you sleep. And when you open your eyes, they're standing over you, breathing down your neck. People think consequences are fair, but fair is a word people use when they're desperate to explain pain they brought on themselves. Consequences aren't fair. They're inevitable. You sow them in whispers and lies, but they return in storms and screams. The funny thing is, you never know which moment is the one that seals your fate. It could be the tiny choice, the one you dismissed as harmless, the missed opportunity, the ignored call, the careless word. That one instant could be the domino that sets off the whole collapse, and when the collapse comes, you'll look back and think, how could something so small do so much damage? But that's the nature of consequences. They hide their weight until they fall, and by then, it's too late to move out of the way. Most people live pretending they're untouchable. They believe the rules don't apply to them, that the fallout will skip over their lives. That's the most dangerous delusion of all. Because the more you think you're immune, the louder the crash when it finally hits. You can run fast, you can hide deep, you can mask yourself with success, money, or charm, but consequences have a longer memory than you do. They remember what you tried to forget, and they don't lose your scent. They circle back at the precise moment you thought you were safe, and they tear through your illusion in seconds. What makes it even more brutal is how consequences expose you. They don't just hit, they reveal. They strip off the polished mask you've been wearing, and suddenly the world sees who you really are. All the things you buried, the things you thought nobody would ever notice, come roaring to the surface. That's why people fear consequences more than failure. Failure you can explain, excuse, dress up as effort. Consequences, though, they're personal. They're the mirror you can't shatter, forcing you to stare at the reflection you avoided your whole life. And consequences don't travel alone. They bring friends, regret, shame, loss. They drag them in like uninvited guests to a party you didn't want to host. And once they're inside, they make themselves comfortable. They sit in your mind, whispering, replaying moments you wish you could erase. They don't leave quickly either. They linger until you've memorized every mistake, until you've replayed every decision in your head 1,000 times, wishing you could rewrite just 1 second of it. But wishing doesn't erase. Consequences are not undone by tears or apologies. They only dissolve when you face them, when you accept the weight, when you stop pretending you can outrun them. And here's the cruelest twist. Sometimes consequences don't arrive immediately. Sometimes they wait. They lull you into thinking you got away with it, that maybe nothing bad will come, that maybe you've slipped past the storm. That's when they're most dangerous. Because when they finally hit, they don't just hit you, they hit everything around you. They spread like fire, consuming not only your life, but the lives of everyone connected to you. You thought it was your secret, your risk, your gamble. But consequences never stay contained. They leak, they spill, they infect. So when people laugh at warnings, when they shrug off the voice inside that says, don't do it, they think they're being bold. They think they're being free. But they're not free. They're just building a cage they'll eventually lock themselves in. Every warning ignored is a bar welded into that cage. And the day the consequences arrive, they shut the door. You'll rattle the bars, you'll scream for a way out. But freedom doesn't answer when you've ignored the price too many times. The truth is, consequences are the only part of life that never misses its appointment. You can skip meetings, dodge people, rewrite stories, but you can't cancel the bill that comes due. And when it arrives, it demands payment in full. Always more than you thought it would cost. Always faster than you hoped it would come. That's the real punchline. You thought you were safe, but safety was never in your hands.